I never thought I'd be the guy writing about discovering my wife, Lisa, cheating on me. We'd been married for about 5 years, and honestly, things weren't perfect, but they weren't terrible either. We had our ups and downs, typical stuff, work stress, her bitchy attitude sometimes, me getting a little distant because of my job. But overall, I thought we were solid, or at least I convinced myself we were. Last month, she booked this couple's retreat for us. Said it would help us reconnect, deal with a few issues, maybe spice things up again. I was skeptical but figured, why not? We needed something, and honestly, I was willing to try anything to fix the growing distance between us. The retreat was in some upscale place out in the woods, fancy enough that I thought we'd be in for a weekend of relaxation and good talks. What I didn't expect was that this trip would turn my entire world upside down. The first signs of trouble started almost immediately. Lisa was acting weird from the get-go, more bitchy than usual, snapping at minor things, snapping at me over nothing. She was short, cold, and constantly checking her phone. I kept thinking she was just stressed, but deep down, I felt like something was off. She'd brush me off when I tried to ask how she was feeling, like she didn't want to go into details. I noticed she'd disappear for a few minutes sometimes, even in the middle of meals or during our scheduled sessions. I shrugged it off as her being a typical pain in the ass, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. Then came the night in the meditation garden. We had just finished a relationship healing session which was supposed to bring us closer. It was weird, honestly, because Lisa was acting a little calmer but also more distant. We sat on a bench, watching the sunset, when she suddenly excused herself, saying she needed some air. I was about to go after her when I caught a glimpse of her through a crack in the hedge. She was with someone. And not just anyone. It was her counselor's partner, Jake. I had no idea they even knew each other outside the retreat, but there they were. Close, too close. Whispering, leaning in, touching her arm in a way that made my stomach turn. I froze, watching from a distance, feeling this icy rush of betrayal flood through me. They looked cozy, like they were sharing a secret, like they didn't care who saw or what it meant. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, Lisa, the woman I trusted, was cheating on me with Jake's partner, someone I'd barely even seen before. The worst part was how calm she looked, like this was just another day, like she was entitled to cheat and hide it because I'd been a bit distant lately. I stayed frozen there, heart pounding, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. That was the moment I knew my marriage was a lot deeper in trouble than I wanted to admit. After that night, everything changed. I started noticing small things, her texts, her late nights, her phone always hidden in her purse. I'd find her lying about where she was, quick to dismiss my concerns, calling me paranoid or insecure. But I wasn't paranoid. I saw the signs. The way she flinched when I got close to her phone. The way she'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts. And I knew, deep down, that it was just her being bitchy or distant. It was something worse. The thing is, I didn't want to believe she'd cheat on me, not after everything. But that moment in the garden was enough to shatter whatever illusions I still had. I started piecing things together, second-guessing every smile, every excuse she threw at me. And that's when I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find out for sure. Because if she was cheating, I needed to confront her, and I needed to do it on my own terms. I couldn't let her keep lying to me, pretending everything was perfect while she was out there messing around with some guy behind my back. That's where I am now, trying to figure out how to catch her in the act, or at least gather enough proof to make her admit it. I don't know what I'll do if I find out she's been lying all this time, but I do know this. I'm not going to let her get away with it, not without some kind of payback. I've got a plan forming, and I'm not backing down. From that night in the meditation garden, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Jake's partner, whispering and touching like they were the only two people in the world. It was like my mind kept flashing back to that moment, looping over and over. I felt sick, angry, betrayed, all at once. I wanted to confront her right then, scream at her, demand answers. But I knew I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just accuse her without proof. That would ruin everything, and I figured she'd just deny it, brush it off as some misunderstanding. No, I needed proof, hard evidence I could hold over her head. So I decided to keep my eyes open, to watch her closely, more than I ever had before. She was sneaky, I'll give her that, always quick to hide her phone, always making up stories about where she was going. At first, I tried to play it cool, acting like I didn't notice anything. But behind my back, I was relentless. I checked her emails, her texts, her social media, whatever I could get my hands on. I needed to know if this was just a fling or something more serious. The tricky part was, I didn't want her to suspect I was onto her. She was so manipulative, always spinning stories to make herself look innocent. I had to be subtle. One afternoon, while she was off pretending to do a yoga class, I slipped her phone out of her bag and checked her messages. My heart was pounding, and I swear I felt like I was going to throw up. But what I saw confirmed my worst fears. There were texts, dirty, suggestive messages, exchanged between her and Jake's partner, Jake himself. They were talking about secret meetings, about how much they enjoyed the getaway and spending time together. I stared at the screen, reading every word. My stomach sank. This wasn't just a one-night stand. It was something ongoing, serious enough for them to hide it from me. I felt betrayed in every fiber of my being. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? She always called herself a strong woman, but all I saw was a bitchy, lying manipulator who was having an affair and thinking she was clever enough to hide it. I wanted to explode, but I kept my cool, pocketed her phone, and made a mental note to confront her properly. Later that evening, she was back in the room trying to act normal, chatting about the retreat, about how healing everything was supposed to be. I kept quiet, watching her carefully. I was furious, but I also felt hurt. Hurt in a way that made my chest ache. I wondered what I'd done wrong, how she could betray me like this. I thought about all the times I tried to be patient with her bitchy attitude, how I still loved her, despite everything. Now I wondered if she ever loved me at all, or if I was just some fool she was fooling while she played her little game. I decided I'd wait a little longer before confronting her outright. I wanted to catch her in the act, or at least have more proof. I planned to follow her during one of her supposed yoga classes, see where she went after. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I was determined to catch her red-handed. If she thought I was naive or stupid enough not to see what was happening, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going to let her ruin everything I built. With her, meanwhile, I kept my emotions in check, but inside I was a mess. Every time she looked at me with that fake smile, I felt like I was dying inside. I kept thinking about what I'd say if I caught her pawing Jake's partner, what I'd say if I finally had proof. Part of me wanted to just walk away, to forget everything and pretend I didn't see anything. But another part, the angry, vengeful part, knew I had to do something more, something permanent. And so I started laying the groundwork, gathering bits of evidence, watching her every move, and preparing myself for the inevitable confrontation. I knew it was coming, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But I was damn sure I wasn't going to let her keep lying and cheating without paying the price. Whatever it took, I was going to find out the truth and make her regret it. That's what this was all about now, reclaiming my dignity, my respect, and showing her she couldn't just walk all over me. I didn't deserve that. No one does. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. Every time Lisa left the room, I'd follow her from a distance, pretending to be absorbed in some bullshit book I brought along, or just zoning out staring at the trees outside. Inside, I was a mess, anger, betrayal, and that sick feeling that I'd been played for a fool. I kept reminding myself I needed concrete proof, not just suspicion. So I stayed quiet, biding my time, waiting for the right moment. One afternoon, she announced she was going to participate in a meditation session, but I knew better. I watched her slip out, then kept a close eye on her. She headed toward the same part of the retreat center I'd seen her go to the night in the garden, the hidden nook behind some bushes, apparently her favorite spot for secret talks. I felt my pulse racing. I followed at a distance, trying to be discreet. What I saw completely wrecked me. She was there, sitting with Jake's partner, Mark. They were close, whispering, leaning in toward each other like they didn't have a care in the world. I could see her hand resting on his knee, her fingers lightly brushing his skin. I watched their faces, barely able to breathe. The way they looked at each other, intimate, hungry, made my blood boil. This wasn't some innocent flirtation. This was full-blown cheating. I could see the way she was laughing softly, her head tilted in a way that told me she was feeding her ego, her bitchy attitude turning into a wicked smile that I'd never seen before. I backed up slowly, heart pounding so loud I was sure it echoed in the quiet woods. That was the moment I decided I couldn't let her keep lying. I had to confront her, but I wanted to do it right. I needed more than just a glimpse. I needed undeniable proof. So I stayed hidden, watching from afar until they finished their secret meeting and parted ways. When she finally came back to the room later that evening, I was already waiting for her, my fists clenched, my mind racing. She walked in, all fake sweetness and that bitchy smirk. She knew she was caught but was trying to act innocent. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Who the hell have you been meeting behind my back, Lisa?" She froze for a second, then threw on that annoyed, dismissive attitude she always pulled when she was hiding something. "What are you talking about? I was just out for a walk. Maybe you're imagining things." "Don't bullshit me," I snapped. I saw you with Mark. Don't try to deny it. I know you're cheating. You've been lying for weeks, haven't you?" Her face twisted into that familiar bitchy glare. "Oh, please, you're just paranoid. You're always accusing me of stuff I didn't do. Maybe you're the one who's cheating, huh? Maybe you're jealous because I don't want to be stuck with some guy who's too busy working all day." I felt my stomach turn. That was her typical bullshit. Blame everything on me, twist reality until I looked like the crazy one. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I pulled out my phone, showed her the pictures I took from behind the bushes, her hand on Mark's knee, her leaning in close, her smile that said she knew she was getting away with something. She stared at the screen, her face draining of color. "You're lying," she spat, but her voice was shaky. "That's not what it looks like. You're just jealous and insecure. I'm not doing anything." "You're damn right I'm jealous," I interrupted. "Because you've been screwing around with our marriage counselor's partner. That's what I saw. How long has this been going on? Weeks? Months?" She tried to deny it, but I was done playing her game. I knew the truth now, and I wasn't gonna let her spin her way out of this. The anger inside me was boiling over, but I kept my voice steady. "You're clearly a bitchy, manipulative liar, Lisa. I don't know what I ever saw in you. But I promise this isn't over. I'm not just going to walk away from this. You're going to have to answer for what you did." Her eyes narrowed and she started crying fake tears. I was sure of it. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for it to happen. He's just a rebound, a mistake. It meant nothing, I swear. Please don't walk out on me. We can fix this." That was the moment I realized how good she was at lying. She spun it like she was the victim, like I was the one who needed to change. But I wasn't buying that anymore. I'd seen enough. I had the proof I needed, and I was done with her bullshit. That night, everything changed. I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who would cheat on me, lie so effortlessly, and then try to manipulate me into forgiving her. I felt a mix of heartbreak and rage, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. Not after I'd seen her true face. The confrontation that night left me exhausted and more confused than ever. Part of me still couldn't believe she'd do something so cruel. Another part, the angry, vengeful part, was already plotting how to make her pay. I knew I couldn't just walk away without consequences. Seeing her break down and lie so effortlessly only pushed me further down the path of revenge. I wasn't the kind of guy to just let this slide, and I sure as hell wasn't going to be some cuckold to her manipulations anymore. After I showed her the photos, she tried to turn it around, crying and saying she made a mistake, that it was just a stupid fling and that she didn't mean for it to happen. I looked at her and felt this immense disgust. She was so good at lying that I almost believed her, but the images proved otherwise. That night, I felt like I was losing my mind, caught between heartbreak and rage. I didn't sleep a wink. All I could think about was how I was going to get back at her. That's what I wanted now. Not just to confront her, but to deliver some kind of punishment that would make her realize she couldn't treat me like a fool. I decided I'd gather more evidence just in case. I wanted to be absolutely sure of everything. The next morning, I started planning my next moves. I knew she'd be going to another meditation session, so I decided to follow her again. This time, I'd be more prepared. I kept my phone ready, set to record if I saw anything suspicious. I also contacted a friend of mine, someone I trust, and asked him to keep an eye on her from his side, just in case I missed something. While she was away, I looked around her belongings, trying to find anything else that might give me proof or clues. I found her diary, and to my surprise, she'd been writing about her feelings, complaining about how distant I'd become, how she was stressed, and unable to resist the temptation of Jake's partner. It was clear she was deep into her deception, trying to justify her actions even to herself. That was the moment I saw how manipulative she truly was. She'd been lying not just to me but to herself. Later that day, I decided to go all in. I set up a small camera in the room we were sharing, hidden behind some books. I wanted to catch her in the act if she slipped up again. I knew this was borderline obsessive, but I didn't care. If she was cheating, I wanted proof that would cut through all her bullshit. That night I sat in the bathroom listening to her get ready for bed, feeling like a detective in some bad movie. My stomach was tight, my hands sweaty, but I stayed still, waiting. Few hours later, I heard her leave the room quietly. I waited for the camera to record her movements. When I checked the footage the next morning, I could hardly believe it. She went out again, this time with her phone, whispering into it, giggling softly, sneaking around like a thief. My heart sank as I watched her slip out the door of the retreat and into the woods. I followed her on foot, discreetly, my mind racing. I was about to catch her red-handed once again, and I knew this was the moment everything changed. What I saw in those woods confirmed what I'd already suspected. There was no denying it. They were meeting again, this time in a secluded spot where no one could see. She was kissing Mark, her hands all over him, clearly having the affair of her life. That was the final blow. I watched her betray me, her face flushed with guilt and desire, and I felt my world shatter. I'd been used, played, lied to. That's when I finally decided I'd had enough. I didn't care about what she said or how she spun it anymore. I had the evidence I needed, and I knew exactly how to use it. I pulled out my phone and started recording her with Mark, knowing I'd have all the proof I needed to end this charade once and for all. I stood there, hidden behind a tree, watching her lose herself in someone who wasn't me. The anger boiled over, and I knew I was going to make her regret every second she ever thought she could cheat and lie without consequences. This wasn't just about catching her. This was about taking control. If she thought she could keep screwing around behind my back and lie her way out of it, she was dead wrong. I was going to show her exactly what betrayal looked like. And once I did, I'd decide what my next move was, whether to fight for the marriage or end it for good. Either way, she was going to pay for what she did. I could feel it in my bones. The revenge was already starting to take shape, and I wasn't going to stop until she knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The footage I captured that night in the woods was exactly what I needed, irrefutable proof of her betrayal. Seeing her in that intimate moment with Mark, her hands all over him, her lips pressed against his, was like a punch in the gut. I stood there in the dark, trembling with a mix of rage, heartbreak, and a strange sense of relief. Now I had the ammunition to end this charade once and for all. I hadn't just accused her randomly. I had concrete evidence, something no amount of lies or fake tears could cover up. The next step was confronting her with everything. I waited until morning when she was still groggy, pretending to be the innocent victim. I knew I had to be careful. If I lost control, she'd deny everything and make me look crazy. So I planned my words carefully. I sat her down, pressed play on my phone, and let her see what she'd been doing behind my back. The secret meetings, the kisses, her cheating with Mark's partner. Her face paled instantly, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for some excuse, some lie to spin her way out. "I told you I was stressed," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. It's just It's just some stupid mistake. I was confused, I swear. It didn't mean anything." She looked at me with wide eyes, trying to act innocent, but the evidence was undeniable. I could see her trying to come up with some bullshit explanation, but I wasn't having it. "You lied to my face," I said, voice cold. "You've been cheating on me with Jake's partner, Mark, and you think I'm just going to forget, that you can just say it was a mistake. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me, how much you've lied?" She burst into tears, but they felt fake, more like a performance than genuine remorse. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she sobbed. I was just so lonely, so overwhelmed. It was a stupid mistake. Please, I love you, don't throw everything away over this. That made me laugh bitterly. Love. She used that word like a weapon, like it was a shield to hide her guilt. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much she'd betrayed everything we built, but I kept my composure. I told her that I needed some time, that I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew one thing. This marriage was over if she thought she could keep lying and cheating without consequences. I then made my decision. I'd have to leave her and I'd do it. In a way that made her regret ever crossing me. I started packing my things, planning my departure from the house we shared. I didn't want her to know how much she'd broken me, but I was determined to make her understand that she'd lost everything. I kept the footage, ready to use it if she tried to manipulate her way out of this or spin her lies into some twisted version of a reconciliation. In the days that followed, I kept my distance, acting like I was still trying to process everything. But inside, I was plotting. I knew I couldn't just walk away quietly. I wanted her to suffer, to realize the magnitude of her betrayal. So I started spreading the truth to a few close friends, people who knew us, who could see through her lies if she tried to paint herself as the victim. I wanted her to see the damage she'd caused, not just to me but to everyone who cared about us. The hardest part wasn't just the betrayal. It was realizing how much I'd invested in this marriage, how much I'd loved her even knowing she was bitchy and manipulative. I kept asking myself why I stayed so long, why I believed she was capable of changing. But now I knew the answer, because I loved her and love makes you blind. You think you can fix things, that love will somehow make everything okay. But she proved me wrong. She proved she was just a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could cheat on her husband and get away with it. Now I was left with the aftermath, my broken heart, the footage, and the decision of what to do next. I knew I'd have to rebuild somehow from the ruins she left behind. For now I was just trying to breathe, trying to figure out how to move forward without her. Somehow I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There would be more and I'd be ready for it. I'd make sure she paid, either by losing everything or maybe, someday, realizing she had to face the consequences of her actions. But one thing was clear. I was done being the fool in this game. The days that followed were a blur of painful clarity. I moved out of the house, packed my things, and left behind the life I thought I knew. Every moment I replayed that night in the woods, the betrayal, her fake tears, her lies. It was like ripping open a wound that refused to heal. But I knew I had to do it, had to get away from the toxicity, the lies, the manipulation. I couldn't stay with someone who thought she could cheat and lie her way out of it, and I definitely couldn't pretend everything was okay anymore. I cut ties with her completely. No contact, no messages, no apologies. I wanted her to feel what it was like to lose someone she apparently didn't value enough to stay faithful to. I shared the footage with a couple of trusted friends, just to keep them in the loop and so someone else could see the truth I'd uncovered. It was my final blow, my way of saying, this is what you did. This is who you are. No more excuses, no more hiding behind lies. The hardest part was facing the aftermath. I had to rebuild my sense of self after all the hurt she put me through. I went to therapy, something I'd avoided for years, and started working through the feelings of betrayal, anger, sadness, and even relief. Because, strange as it sounds, part of me felt relief. Relief that I finally saw her for who she was, that I didn't have to keep pretending everything was fine when it was. I learned some tough lessons from this. Trust is fragile, and betrayal cuts deeper than I ever thought possible. But I also learned that revenge isn't just about getting back at someone. It's about reclaiming your own life, dignity, and peace. I didn't want her to win by breaking me. I wanted to walk away, stronger, wiser, and more aware of what I deserve. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's that you can survive the worst betrayals by facing the truth, confronting it head-on, and taking control of your own future. Eventually, I started dating again. Slowly, cautiously. I learned to trust again, though maybe a little more guarded this time. I'm not the same man I was before her betrayal. I've become more aware of red flags, more confident in my worth, and less willing to tolerate bullshit. I still think about her sometimes, about how someone I loved could turn into such a cold liar. But I Also remind myself that I deserve better, more respect, honesty, loyalty. Looking back, I see how much I grew from this experience. It's painful, but it's also taught me not to ignore the warning signs, not to stay quiet when something feels wrong, to stand up for myself, no matter how much it hurts. Because in the end, I realized that my worth isn't defined by her lies or her cheating. It's defined by how I handle the fallout, how I rebuild, and how I refuse to let someone else's betrayal destroy who I am. So yeah, I got played, I got lied to, and I got hurt in ways I never imagined, but I also got stronger. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to know, don't let betrayal define you. Face it, learn from it, and move on. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one who can decide what your life looks like after someone like her. And I choose to move forward, better, wiser, and more determined than ever to never let anyone cheat me out of my happiness again.